Sometimes things happen where it's almost impossible to refute that things happen by chance. My mother grew up in India, and when she went to college, she made this really, really great friend who was a couple of years older than her. They both worked in the dormitories in some capacity and used to meet up every night and talk. Well, years later, her friend moved to the U.S., and my mother also went to graduate school in the U.S. for 2 years, and that was in the early 60s. And on the way back from graduate school or on some trip that she was on, she stopped in Chicago and reconnected with her friend who had just given birth to her first child. After that, they both lost touch. My mother moved back to India, supposedly to start a new life over there and spend the rest of her days in India. However, she met my father, and they both decided to move to Montreal, and my father got a teaching position at one of the universities there. And in the late 70s, found themselves at a campground in New York State. And over there one day in the morning, my mother saw her friend walk by. She was able to catch up with her, and they reconnected and restarted their friendship again. This friend of hers now had 3 children, and their entire family stopped by Montreal to visit us for a day, and several pictures were taken. Years later, in 2018, during a long period where I was back and forth working in California, I got a contract in Sacramento, and my mother said, "Oh, my friend, this particular one I'm talking about, lives there. You must connect with her." So I did, and instantly her and her daughter, who she was living nearby, and her daughter's family became friends of mine, and they felt instantly like family. I did a couple of Zoom calls over the years, and I got to reconnect with this family several times as I was within, 3 hours several times for contracts, and would make a point of connecting with them. Then this year, this friend of hers moved back up to Michigan. So here's the deal. What were the odds that my mother would find herself and reconnect with a friend randomly, supposedly, in a campground in New York State where neither of them lived, and found themselves there at the same time and literally crossed paths? When you think of how many people are on the planet, or if you think about how many people are in Canada and the US, the odds of them running into each other is pretty much almost nil. But that's why I think that the universe brought them together. They were meant to re-meet, rekindle their friendship, and because of that, I got to get to know them much later. And here's the other thing that happened. So during those years, those 5 years after I connected with them in 2018, I was in my storage unit where I hold my photos, and I found this box of photos and literally found photographs of this friend of my mother and her family visiting us, and we were playing badminton in our backyard. So I took photos of them, and, we all looked kind of geeky as teenagers in the 1970s. But what were the odds I would actually find those photos? What were the odds that I would end up in a city for a few years when this friend of my mother's was living there? What were the odds of our family and my mother's friend's family who lived in Michigan or somewhere out there, us living in Montreal, to end up in the same state at the same campground at the same time, and my mother to cross paths with her friend? I think that's the universe saying that this friendship was really important, that they had to re-meet, and that really affected my life because they were amazing people. They are amazing people, and I'm in touch with them to this day. My mother and her friend are now in their 90s. If you like this video, please like, save, and follow me.